Yes, guys, Grey 100 MUFC debate. Now, today I'd like to speak to you, if you do not mind, about Nobby Stiles, legend of Manchester United and legend of England. Coroner has released a report on the tragic circumstances of his death. Now, I'm not going to dwell too long on that because we don't really want to speak about too much negativity. What I want to do is actually discuss his life and his accolades. But I think it's very important, we just very quickly, if I read this couple of paragraphs, it's two paragraphs, just so that we've got some perspective on why this is in the news now, why I'm talking about Nobby Stiles today. So here we go, just bear with me. The coroner at the hearing into the death of the late great Nobby Stiles MBE, who passed away aged 78 in 2020, has ruled that the brain condition the great man died with was caused by repeatedly heading a football. It is claimed that Nobby had headed the ball around 140,000 times. The coroner's court based in Stockport heard the former Manchester United legend died with severe dementia, with expert analysis stating it was as a result of Alzheimer's disease, but also because of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is associated with head trauma from heading a football. Neuropathology expert Dr. Daniel Duplessis said he was quite convinced his heading the football so many times had caused the CTE. Now, Nobby was born on the 18th of May 1942, Norbert Peter Stiles. He was actually born in the cellar of his house due to an air raid going on because it was World War II and the Germans were dropping bombs on us. Now, the house was in Collyhurst in Manchester, where he was raised a Catholic and attended St Patrick Primary School in the area. His father, Charlie, was the manager of an undertaker's parlour in a family business, and his mother, Kitty, supplemented the family income working as a machinist, and he was actually of Irish descent. And he married a lady called Kay Giles. She was actually the sister of Johnny Giles, a footballer. They were introduced to each other around the time Johnny Giles and Nobby Stiles were teammates at Manchester United. Nobby and his wife Kay actually lived in Manchester and had three kids, one of which, John, was a professional footballer and played for Shamrock Rovers in Dublin, and he actually played for Leeds United in the 80s also. So before discussing his football career, I just want to skip forward some years and discuss this. I have actually just picked this information up. I was aware of it, but I wouldn't have been able to just pull it off the top of my head. So I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to make things up. I'm going to just hold my hands up and say, look, I'm reading this bit. Stiles' FIFA World Cup medal and a European Cup medal were bought by Manchester United for more than £200,000 at an auction on the 27th of October 2010. The World Cup medal, which Stiles won in the '66 final against West Germany, sold for £160,000. His European Cup medal, which he won with United in '68, was also sold, reaching more than £49,000. Stiles sold the medals so that his family could benefit from the proceeds. Wages weren't like they are today, clearly. Now, Stiles' teenage self, as a United apprentice, was actually portrayed by actor Kyle Ward in 2011 in a BBC TV drama named United, which was sort of centred around the Munich air disaster in 1958, in which, as we all know, 8 of his senior colleagues died tragically. On the 24th of November 2013, he was actually diagnosed with prostate cancer, and in 2016, it was announced that he was suffering from advanced dementia. So he was too ill to attend a celebration dinner to mark the 50th anniversary of England's 1966 World Cup win. And in 2017, there was a television show presented by Alan Shearer, and it was about the subject of brain injuries amongst professional footballers, and he actually interviewed Nobby Stiles' son for the show. Now, Nobby died on the 30th of October 2020 at Manor Hay Care Centre in Manchester. And actually, I mean, it sounds a bit gruesome, this, but his brain was donated to the Field Study, FIELD, and that's conducted by Dr. Willie Stewart. It's to do with the link between dementia and a career in professional football. He was actually one of 5 England players from the 1966 World Cup final who suffered from, and in some cases died of, dementia. So it's quite a serious thing. I mean, in them days, the footballs were like bloody rocks anyway, weren't they? It wasn't like a modern day football. Although they reckon modern day football can do as much damage. It was quite a thing to stick your noggin on one of them balls coming at you at speed. The coroner ruled that Stiles' dementia had been caused by repeatedly heading a football throughout his career, which, I don't know, it sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Can't be too good for you. Anyway, let's have a look at his career. So in 1966, Sir Alf Ramsey, he had no qualifying campaigns or anything like that, so that he could prepare his team and work out who was going to play and who wasn't going to play. So he was sort of running around friendly matches and British Championship games, assessing players on the fly. But he just had to get himself around all the stadiums and watch all these games and see if he could pick the best. I think it was 22-man squad he had to pick. His work was certainly cut out there. So anyway, the only player that he could really say he knew would be going along as far as midfield's concerned was Bobby Charlton. So he had to find other players to play alongside him in midfield. And Nobby being small, it was quite rare for him even to be selected to play football as a youth, because back in them days they were dismissing kids on the height alone before they've even seen any skills, talents or whatever. They were just dismissing him on the height, and Nobby was quite small. Anyway, he managed to get in there. They needed what they call a spoiler. So Nobby was like sort of nicknamed a destroyer. He was selected anyway. So he was tested out on Scotland, and it ended up in a 2-2 draw, that game. That was in 1965, and he kept his place for 8 of the next 9 games. So I think by that point it sort of cemented his position in the team, scoring the goal at Wembley as well against West Germany along the way. So after that, and going forward a few games, he got to like his 15th cap, and it was a 0-0 draw against Uruguay. Now back then, Uruguay were a great team. Uruguay were actually the first winners of the World Cup, if I remember correctly. And then after that, we had wins over Mexico and France, and then scraped past. And get this one, this will be a surprise for you. Not a violent Argentinian team. Now, during the France game, Stiles had a bit of a run-in with Jacques Simon. Yeah, he seriously injured him, and the FA and the press here were calling for Alf Ramsey to actually drop him. Unbelievable. But there you go, there's the British press for you. Sir Alf Ramsey defended him, and he was saying that the tackle was mistimed rather than malicious. Well, back your players. I like that. Now, moving forward to the semi-finals, Stiles performed an effective man-marking job on the Portuguese prolific goal scorer, Eusebio, one of the all-time greats, to the extent that the player was essentially nullified for the whole match, and England went on to win the match 2-1. His tactics, despite the criticism they provoked from some, were effective. Eusebio's only contribution was a late penalty in a match where both sides were considered to have played attractive football in good spirit and with few fouls. England progressed to the final. In the dressing room afterwards, Ramsey praised Stiles' individual performances, and that was a rare accolade. So in the final, which is Stiles' 20th cap, he actually had no man-marking brief for the West Germans. But he played strong and tough matches. We were 2-1 up, and then the Germans scored with basically the last kick of the game. And obviously, as many people know, Jeff Hurst completed his hat-trick in extra time. And at the final whistle, Nobby Stiles did a spontaneous sort of jig with the Jules Rimet trophy in his hand whilst holding his false teeth in the other, which was a poignant moment, and it's been seen many, many times and celebrated over the years. Now, Baddiel and Skinner both acknowledged him in, what was the song called now? Three Lions, was it? Yeah, the one with the lightning seeds for Euro 1996. With the line, and Nobby's dancing. I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't sing, but I can't help it. I'm going to do it again. And Nobby's dancing. That was better, wasn't it? It was like more enthusiastic. In the 1998 version, I'm just being shown, in a reference to the World Cup finals taking place in France, the middle section consisted of the line, "We can dance, Nobby's dance, we can dance it in France." So yeah, he was recognised and loved. So anyway, after that, Stiles played in the next 4 internationals, but was deemed to have performed a bit badly. England lost to Scotland at Wembley in '67, and therefore Nobby got dropped by Ramsey. He was selected in '68 European Championships, but the holding role was at that point basically taken by Alan Mullery. England went out to Yugoslavia in the semi-finals of that competition. And funnily enough, Mullery, who sort of ousted him from his position, became the first player to be sent off, the first ever England player to be sent off in that semi-final against Yugoslavia. But at that point, it was clear that he was the man for the defensive midfield position. Nobby played just once for England in '69 and then twice in '70. He was selected by Ramsey for the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, but only as Mullery's understudy, so, you know, he was being pushed out. England surrendered the title in the quarter-final, but he never played for his country again. He ended with 28 caps and 1 goal. And now I'm going to talk about his managerial career. You know, I'm saving the best for last, his United career. In August '75, he was appointed as a caretaker manager of Preston when Bobby Charlton resigned. It was over defender John Bird being sold to Newcastle, and Bobby wasn't happy about it. So Bobby resigned and Nobby took over. But then a week later, Nobby resigned in support of his former colleague at Manchester United. He later actually returned to Preston as a manager in 1977, but then he lost his job in 1981. He was sacked along with his assistant after the club were relegated. He then took himself off to Canada, to the NASL, and that was 1981, to become the coach of Vancouver Whitecaps, and he actually spent 3 years at the Canadian club before taking over at West Brom in 1985. However, he was sacked after the side managed only 3 wins under his leadership, and that was basically it for him. That was his last stab at being a manager. He never went back then. He just retired from it. He found it difficult, apparently, travelling from Manchester to the Midlands and back for games, and he actually suffered. And he openly admitted he'd suffered with depression, and he was struggling a little bit with it, you know, because he was family, travelling, stress of football, travelling, family, and just kept going around in circles like that, and it started to drive him a little bit mad. However, in '89, he returned to Manchester United, and he was there till 1993. And he worked for United as the youth team coach, developing skills in teenage prodigies such as David Beckham, Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt and the Neville brothers. He was awarded an MBE in 2000 after a campaign by a large contingency of the media, as it happens. And they sort of highlighted that 5 of the 1966 team had never been officially decorated for their achievements. So he joined Alan Ball, Roger Hunt, Ray Wilson and George Cohen in collecting an award. Now, Nobby was actually a Manchester United fan as a kid, and he was playing for the England schoolboys at the age of 15 when he was recognised by Manchester United, and they actually gave him an apprenticeship in I think it was September 1959. He was sort of not really, he didn't really look like a footballer, if you know what I mean. He was short when, like as I said earlier, teenagers were being rejected because of the height. He had several teeth missing, and he used to remove them before the games, which gave him a bit of a menacing look. He started balding at a very young age and had his dramatic comb over Bobby Charlton style. He was actually also very short-sighted and needed really strong contact lenses when he played. When he wasn't playing, he had these almost comedic sort of thick-rimmed specs on. However, he caught Matt Busby's eye, Sir Matt Busby's eye, because of his tenacious style of play, and he was given a debut back in October '60, and that was against Bolton Wanderers. His simple passing game, fearless ball winning skills, quickly got him moved to a holding midfield role, which was quite rare because you didn't really have holding midfielders as such back then, because you sort of had 5 players going forward and then you'd have your centre backs moving up to sort of fill that gap and defend quite high. Yeah, but his passing ability was like really, really good, and that was used to the advantage of players like Bobby Charlton and George Best. They were able to use more of the pitch, and his defensive, obviously, his defensive roles were very effective also. Anyway, Matt Busby, he wasn't frightened of dropping him. In 1963, we beat Leicester 3-1 in the FA Cup final, and he just did not feature. He wasn't picked for the game at all, but did play more in the oncoming seasons, and won the First Division title back in 1965, and then again in '67. Obviously, bigger things were to come. We reached the European Cup final at Wembley, and he faced his old nemesis Eusebio, who played for Benfica, by the way. That was who we were playing. He played well. He didn't keep Eusebio totally quiet. With a score at 1-1 and just a few minutes left, the Portuguese legend got away from the United defence with only Stepney to beat, yet only managed to slam the ball straight at him. United won 4-1 and became the first English club to lift Europe's main trophy. After 395 matches and 19 goals, United sold Stiles in '71 to Middlesbrough for £20,000. 2 years later, he became a player coach at Preston when Bobby Charlton was manager. So yeah, that's a bit of a story I've managed to put together with information I've learnt, things I've known for years, and literally just then been handed details whilst I was going on. So yeah, tickle a like, subscribe and hit the notification bells. Grey 100 out.